Chapter 4. The deer. It's not a deer, it's a doe, and there are 5 of them in my arbor. Instead of helping Juanita carry the body, I went to sit in the driver's seat of Papa's car to be sure Juanita didn't try her driving stunt again. Looking at myself in the rearview mirror, I took the cubic zirconia stud out of my left ear and replaced it with La Llorona's elaborate ear pendant. The zirconia studs weren't expensive, but they were a birthday gift from Mama, so I didn't want to lose them. I attached both studs to an old envelope I found in the car and tucked them safely into the glove box. Still looking at myself, I shook my head, trying to get used to the weight of La Llorona's ear pendant. I watched it glint in the daylight and wondered if it really was magical. It looked ancient and mysteriously beautiful, and for a moment I thought it glittered magically. Juanita rested her forearms on the driver's window and looked at the ear pendant. "Where did you get that?" "I found it," I said, twisting at the back of it to make it stay in place. It would take time to get used to the great weight of it pulling down on my small earlobe. "Nice," she said, touching it gingerly. "Can I try it on?" "No," I said. It's not what?" Juanita's eyes narrowed as if she were trying to put together a word puzzle. "It's nothing," I said, stammering my own words like a stalling engine. "Don't you have something better to do than stand around looking at me? I'm not that interesting." Her face dropped sheepishly. "Well, I think I'm going to need some help. He weighs a ton. Dead weight, you know." "Oh, no," I said, getting out of the car and slamming the door shut. "This is your show, not mine." "Fine, whatever." Juanita walked away in a huff. I leaned back against the car, crossed my arms, and watched as she enlisted the help of Velia and Delia. Even though I had put on the earring, I refused to admit that I was seriously considering taking the body back home to its wife and kids. It was unfathomable. "This is stupid," I kept telling myself. "Ghosts aren't real, and they don't give you expensive presents. I should go home and have my head examined." "Okay," Juanita said, after positioning the body in the back seat with the side of his face resting against a pillow, looking like he was trying to sleep. Juanita took a list out of her back pocket and started rattling off its contents. "Blankets?" she asked. "Check," Velia verified. "Flashlight?" Juanita continued. "Check." Delia patted her hip, and for the first time I saw that she had sort of a tool belt full of odds and ends wrapped around her waist. It was one of Mama's worn waitress aprons with loops and odd-shaped pockets sewn awkwardly all over it. I pointed at the absurd contraption. "What's in there?" I asked. "In this?" Delia asked, grinning with ingenious pride. Her perfect smile brilliant. "Medical kit, makeup, perfume, scissors, batteries, candles." "Perfume?" I asked. "Why would we need perfume?" Velia rolled her eyes. "Hello, he's gonna start stinking." "Oh, great," I retorted. "So now he's not just going to look like a prostitute, he's going to smell like one too." Velia gave Delia an elbow shove in the rib cage. "I told you we should have brought Papa's Old Spice." "It was almost gone," Delia said, rubbing at her side. "So why not bring both?" Velia looked mad now. "I did," Delia said, pulling out Papa's old bottle of cologne with nothing more than a few drops left in the bottom of it. "See?" Please, Juanita interjected. "Can we just move this along? We don't have time to nitpick each other." "That's right," Velia said, watching me intently with fierce hazel eyes. "Today, we're on a mission, and we shouldn't let anything stop us from doing what's right. Today, we need to work together. Otherwise, this whole thing could blow up on us." "You mean like we could get caught and end up in juvie?" Peta asked. Delia took off the apron and folded it carefully so nothing would spill out of its pockets. She put it in the trunk where I saw more supplies. When they had gotten those out of the house? When had they gotten those out of the house? "They wouldn't do that to us, would they?" She said, looking at Velia for reassurance. "Of course not," Velia answered, sounding like an expert. "It's not like we've broken any laws." "Actually," Juanita began, "improper disposal of a dead body, even failing to report it, is a crime. That's why we're doing this, right? And taking it to his family who can give him a proper burial. But no matter what happens, we are 5 little sisters, 5 hermanitas, the Garza girls, together forever, no matter what," Juanita exclaimed. And like every time one of us said those words, they all huddled together and hugged. That's when I started to turn. Being left out of the circle of the 5 hermanitas was like becoming an orphan or suddenly being homeless. I didn't like the way that felt. I didn't want to be apart from them, ever, even if Juanita was changing the subject to avoid focusing on what could go wrong. So I did what any true sister would have done at a time like that. I stepped forth and let them pull me in. I wasn't pretending either. At that very moment, I changed my mind, believed in us as a team. believed that together we could get through anything. And for an instant, I wondered if maybe La Llorona was right, and this journey was our destiny, our path to true happiness. So we all loaded our gear in the trunk and got in the car. Juanita rode in the front with me. Delia and Velia sat side by side in the back seat next to the sleeping drowned man, while Peta wedged herself against the opposite car door trying to stay away from him. At the edge of the woods, before we turned onto El Indio Highway, I paused at the stop sign long enough to turn around to look at the twins. "What do you think?" I asked, shaking my head to make the argolas, argollas? Is that how you say that? None of you know? Okay. The nesting rings on La Llorona's ear pendant rattle against each other. "Do I look stupid wearing only one earring?" "What are you talking about?" Juanita asked. "You're wearing two of them. They're a matching set. But really, where did you get them?" "Them?" To my surprise, I felt the weight of an ear pendant on my right ear even before I reached up and touched it. Feeling the coldness of the yellow gold with my fingertips, I looked at myself in the rearview mirror again. There it was, the other ear pendant, framing my face and winking at me. Its magical power was indisputable in the sunlight. "I found them," I said, trying to satisfy her curiosity without giving away too much. She hadn't believed me when I tried telling her about La Llorona anyway. "Well, do I look dumb wearing these giant hoops?" "No," Velia said, excitedly joining the conversation. "You look powerful, like a woman who knows what she wants out of life." Delia reached over and flicked the golden rings with her forefinger, making them twinkle against each other. "Yeah, especially with your hair all wild like that. You look like a gypsy, a rebel with an eye for fashion." I reached up and touched my hair. It was more than wild. It was downright ratted with knots because I hadn't even brushed it since we got out of the water yesterday, when we found the dead man. I wondered if there was a comb I could use later in Delia's apron contraption. "I think it makes you look older," Juanita observed, "more sophisticated." Good, I like that," I said, putting the car into gear and turning onto El Indio Highway toward the border. I need all the sophistication I could muster to make us believable when we attempted to cross the bridge. Crossing customs on the American side is always fast and easy. There's a toll to pay, so Velia put the $3 in the dead man's right hand and rested it on the right shoulder pad of the driver's seat. She pressed her shoulder under the dead man's arm to make it look like he wanted to be closer to her daddy, when in reality she was keeping his arm from slipping and falling onto her lap. When we pulled up to the toll booth, the duty officer didn't even look at us. Peripherally, he must have seen Velia take the money from the drowned man's hand and reach over to me to pay, because he took it from her without once glancing at us, unaware of who or what was inside the car. That's how much he cares, I thought. At that moment, I had a choice. I could make him care by informing him that the man sitting rigidly behind me was actually a corpse, or I could just keep driving. As I watched the duty officer straighten up and look at the next car, a brazen breeze picked up around us. It passed through the car, dragging a small bevy of tiny brown mariposas into the car. The butterflies flittered around us, beating their wings gently against the windshield, then sitting prettily on the dashboard. At least a dozen of them had flown into the back seat and settled on Peta. 4 of them clung to her hair, opening and closing their wings in long, luxurious strokes, while the rest of them crawled delicately along her arms. "I think they like us," Peta said, smiling and sitting as motionless as humanly possible, trying her best not to disturb the delicate butterflies. With one of the mariposas climbing up her nose, staring at her eye to eye, Peta looked like Bambi right before the hunter shot his mother. The image of Peta looked so innocent. What?
He said that he had one. And then he said that Mr. Jennings has one too, but we haven't met that.
Okay. I'll go look on my prep period. Okay, get those 2 and give her back to themselves. We're finding the rest. Okay. The image of Peta looked so innocent and young, made me think of the dead man's children sitting at home wondering what happened to their papa. At the moment, I realized what would happen if we were caught with the dead man's body in our car. These people would call Child Protective Services, and that would lead to a full investigation of Mama. They would label her neglectful and make her look like an unfit mother. It felt like I deliberated our journey for hours, when in reality we were there for only a few more seconds. The people in the cars behind me started honking, and the toll booth attendant looked into the vehicle for the first time since we drove up. He glanced suspiciously at the man sleeping behind me. Terrified that he might catch us with a corpse in the car, I snapped into action. I reached up and gave my left ear pendant a vigorous spin and asked it for help, low enough for the girls not to hear me. Aztec Queen Tonantizine, Holy Mother of all mankind, give me your magical assistance. Distract this man, make him forget what he has seen. That's a nice pair of earrings, the attendant said, mesmerized by the sight of the swirling argollas humming against my cheeks. Where did you get them? I'd like to find something like that for my wife. They were a gift, I said, watching as the man squinted to avoid the glare of golden light emanating from La Llorona's ear pendant and glinting directly into his eyes, momentarily blinding him. They're beautiful, he said, still too entranced by them to do much else. Is that it? I asked as I watched the officer stare at my earlobe. Sure, go on, he said, waving us off in a dazed state of mind. The spell worked. I knew La Llorona was real, but for her promise of magic to be real, too, was more than I had expected. I was so exhilarated by the realization that I did the most unexpected thing in the world. I listened to my inner nut and sped out of the caseta? I don't know. Leaving everything that was familiar and normal and full of life, crossing over the threshold into the darkness of a dead man's life. We drove the few miles across the international bridge with the windows down, the wind whipping our hair around our faces until we slowed down and drove into the aduana, the Mexican customs station. I pulled into the center booth and waited for the officer to come over to speak to us. Hello? Yeah. Sure. Bye. Whitney, will you go down to the office and grab something for me to sign and bring it back here from the Andrea, the one at the back? The Mexican official was scary. He was a big fat man, older than the moon, with huge bulging eyes that devoured our female frames. When he saw that our father was asleep in the back seat, he looked from one pretty girl to another and licked his lips like an iguana. I wanted to sink the gas pedal into the floorboard and peel out of there, but he had other ideas. He looked at my small chest for a long time, and then he smiled knowingly at me. "Where are you ladies going?" he asked. "We're going to Chihuahua," I lied in perfect Spanish, a task that was not difficult since Spanish was our first language. "We're taking him home to," Peta interjected. "Our grandmother," Juanita exclaimed, smiling nervously. "We're going to see our grandmother in Chihuahua." The girl's lies cut through me like the sharpness of an obsidian knife. The mention of our grandmother made me physically jerk in my seat. It was so reminiscent of what La Llorona said I should do. I turned around and whispered, "TMI," with a "I could kick you" look on my face. Inside, I was fighting the urge to cry. The thought of going right up to my paternal grandmother's residence, sitting down at her table, and tasting her cooking more than saddened me. I wondered how she would receive us after only having seen us twice in her lifetime. Would she even know who we were? "It's our birthday, me and my twins," Delia continued, pointing at Vilia. "My grandmother's throwing us a party," Vilia said, batting her long eyelashes. "There's going to be a live band, Los Coyotes," Delia intervened, showing her perfect teeth as she smiled. "You can come if you want. Why are they coming up with this all?" I asked myself as I watched them lie shamelessly to the dirty old man. The more unsolicited information we provided, the more he might suspect something. "He can't come. He has to stay here and take care of business," I said, turning to give them a look like the one Mama gives us when we're being bad. The look worked, because after that they just looked at him and pouted in mock disappointment. "Your big sister's right," the old officer said, laughing. "I have too much work. You see, he can't come," I concluded, staring straight ahead. "But thanks for inviting me," he said. "You girls have fun. Maybe I'll see you on the way back." And with that, he winked, an act that turned the sandwich I had had the night before into a revolting slime that churned and festered in my stomach. "Bye-bye." Both Vilia and Delia waved at the officer as we drove past the aduana and into Piedras Negras. My heart was racing and my head was hurting, but the girls were whooping and hugging each other in the back seat. Juanita just sat back and looked at me smugly. A tiny bit of sisterly pride glinted in her brown eyes, but I didn't acknowledge it. I stared at the road ahead instead. "We did it," Vilia yelled. "We got through the freaking border." "Don't celebrate yet," I told them as I veered around the plaza. We circled around El Santuario de Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe and promptly crossed ourselves at the sight of the old church. We may have been wild and rebellious, but our mother wasn't raising complete heathens. You might want to go in there and pray, I continued. We have a long, challenging road ahead of us. We'll be lucky to get past the checkpoint outside the city limits. This guy was the least of our problems. Hey, if we can get past that fat Bobo, Juanita said, we can get past the checkpoint. Whatever, I mumbled under my breath. They had no idea how much of an effort this was going to be, but I figured they'd find out soon enough. No one bursting their sopapillas quite yet. Dun, 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 chapter 5.